Hello everyone, my name is Stonesy Boy and welcome back to Reading with Stonesy. Today we are reading the final longest video, which is 116 to 142. And I've been trying to put off this video for so long, as a matter of fact, that I actually have organized every other, and I mean every other book that we have. Every single other. All the FNAFs, all the FNAF Tales, all the Minecraft books, every book. All of them. They are all fully organized. For future episodes, I've done research on what my future episodes are going to be on. I've been putting off this episode because this is going to be the longest reading. Because normally, it's just 26 pages. The one page is 1.5 pages. So this isn't going to be 26 or however many it's supposed to be. Yeah, 26. This isn't going to be 26. This is going to be 48. It's going to be heck on earth for what it's worth. And it's not going to be nice. It's not going to be a nice book to me. It's not going to be nice to me. Right now I'm just trying to also stall for time so that I can get to the dollhouse itself, and then boom, now we're here. The next episode is 19 pages. The next one after that is 20 pages, and the one after that is 16. This one is 26. This one's gonna suck. So without further ado, and by that I mean let me get my machine running. Let's begin. Oh, there's also only 2 chapters, so we are not getting a break. So this will be fun. Chapter 24. Part of Olivia's day included watching the news. One channel, CP24, reported the news all day. They would rerun stories in smaller window, and the rest of the screen would be filled with sports scores and weather. A nice drone in the background while she made the rounds of the house, ensured all windows and doors were locked before settling down on the couch and streaming tea beside her, and the iPad in her lap. The tension she felt upon escaping the pink room was fading with time. Before, she would jump at the house, settling her strong and rattling window in the frames, and she would examine the snow around the house, peering through the window if there any new footprints appeared overnight. Certain at some point there would be. Olivia used the couch under windows when she passed the convenience of the jackal hid outside, waiting for a glimpse before he rushed and snatched her. He had ground her teeth into her jaw hurt and clenched her muscles until they spasmed from unending fear of the jackal returning to her, free in body, prisoner in mind. As part of the Olivia's morning ritual, she still checked the snow outside the house for footprints, but she was no longer certain if there be any. Even though she double-checked every door and ensured the alarm panel's green light indicating operation still blinked cheerfully and the press of air didn't weigh as heavy, she didn't feel eyes on her all the time. She no longer twitched when she clicked boomed in the basement and turned warm air through the vents. With time, she might have become normal. Her hand rose to her ear, as well as normal she ever could be. She frowned and resumed her battle on the iPad with Candy Crush, determined to advance. Between listening to the news, playing Candy Crush, and sipping her tea, Olivia looked forward to the move with fear and excitement. After Frank committed with helping him, which still surprised Olivia, they moved ahead in buying the place. The purchase was conditional upon sale of the house now lived in, but no one considered it an issue. On the weekend, she and her dad were going to clean the place up, splash some paint around, and get rid of the clutter and prepare for the house for the viewing. She wondered what she would do when the people came to the house for the viewings. Weekend or evening viewings would be best. She didn't like leaving the house without her dad, and she wouldn't leave the house with anyone else. Not Dale, not Frank, not anyone but her dad. Maybe she didn't trust Frank and Dale as much as her dad and thought it was unfair that she might have to work for trust issues. She thought Dale often and wondered what type of relationship, if any, they could have with each other. They were 2 very different people now. They related to each other, though shared remembrances, and she suspected they were already beginning to drift apart. She didn't want to bring up that she had been through, which was good because she didn't want to talk about it. Not to him, not yet, but instead, they ended up talking around it. She would not discuss what she had been doing for the last 5 years, and since they both knew that she had been during this time, their conversation drifted to movies and music she hadn't seen or heard. Nothing to relate with the other. They appreciated this concern, knew it was genuine, though their conversation soon grew awkward and filled with long pauses. She felt him drawing away from her and found no reason to stop it from happening. The one pleasant intimacy from high school didn't exist any longer. They were both very different people than they used to be, alien to each other. To be honest, they were on different planets. He wanted to maintain the friendship. She knew that. He admired her and told her he thought of her stronger than he could ever hope to be. Circumstances drew her strength, and she didn't know she had, and she wouldn't wish what she had gone through on anyone. She had strength, sure, but the cost had been too great. Deep in her own thoughts, her remaining index finger moving the candles around on the screen, it took a moment for the news and the TV to register when it would happen. Her mouth hung open and she dropped the tea in the carpet. Unconcerned about her tea, her eyes riveted to the TV as though pulled by some inextricable string. She had been reported it didn't make sense. Jen had been murdered. Jen's mother had been killed. I slipped a knife out of her holster at her side and held it, the way a child would a teddy bear for reinsurance. Then the phone rang and she screamed. She pressed a button on the cordless and held the phone to her ear before realizing she could be making a terrible mistake. What if it was him calling? But then he wouldn't call. He had never spoken to her. Her dad's voice flooded her ear. He would come home soon. He heard the news too. Detective arrived as Harry and Olivia sat down for dinner. Olivia didn't want to eat. The idea she may have to eat something never occurred to her. Her dad insisted to make grilled cheese sandwiches instead of 2 glasses of orange juice on the table. Olivia's hand strayed on the knife in her hip. Tactile hardness of the handle felt cool under her fingers. He twitched and cringed at the sound of the wind pulling and pressing against the window, the vinyl sliding in the house. All the process she made over the months evaporated in the moment. She had been reduced to the quivering mess she had been when she walked out of the dungeon. The news of the murder rattled her father. He kept wiping at his lip. She wanted to drink real bad. She wanted to tell him to call someone from AA, but that would take him away from her, and she didn't want that. Needed him here, and he knew it was selfish, but right now she didn't care. Maybe later, when her insides weren't pitched so tight, when she had time, she could feel guilty and go on an AA meeting with him. If she could summon the courage to leave the house ever again. And it was a big if. The detective knocked on the door and Harry raised a sandwich to his mouth. Olivia had expected someone from the police hours earlier. Considering she and Lucy were likely next targets of the maniac, she thought the detective would have been out there trying to quell the rising fears. After the news had aired, 2 patrol cars arrived and parked out in front of the house. Not long after, media vans swung the curb. One officer, a young female with dark-rimmed glasses, knocked on the door to tell the detective to be there later. She didn't think later meant hours later, after it got dark. Olivia stood as the detective entered the kitchen, mid-30s with an air of competence. He appeared slim and well-groomed. His gaze missed nothing, and although she sensed compassion in his eyes, there was a bit of steel there, too. He wasn't one who met before. No outdated mustache on the guy's face. She frowned. Who are you? Detective Constable Davis. What happened to the other guy? One with the terrible mustache. Davis blinked and smiled and said, I'm the new detective assigned to the case. The other guy was on file coordinator, and yes, the mustache is terrible. Word is his wife won't let him shave it. Says it makes his chin look weak, whatever that means. She stared at him. He swallowed and said, well, I'm not exactly new. I've been working for this a bit now. You knew me? You're new to me. Yeah. She folded her arms over her chest and said, and you're only introducing yourself to me now? I've had a lot of material to review. Video interviews, witness statements, physical evidence. It takes some time to get through. His hairlines beaded the sweat under his scrutiny. He said, is it hot in here? Olivia said, I'm quite comfortable. Harry said, would you like a drink of something, detective? Something cold? No, I'm fine, thank you. Olivia's fear commingled with her irritation. Fear of the jackal, irritation had not been told in a new investigator. When did this guy get assigned? She thought the police would involve her with considering a prisoner of a freak where they were investigating for 5 years. She didn't think he deserved to be treated this way, like some lame cast-off character, the gruesome thriller, and waiting all afternoon for this guy to walk in and casual and cool, but her life wasn't a risk. It stunk and pissed her off. A sneer curled up in her lip and she said, better have something, detective. You're going to be here a while. You're going to tell me what the fuck is going on and what you intend to do about it. I want to know your theories, if you don't have any, and I want to know what you're going to do to keep me safe. I've waited all afternoon for you. You're not going anywhere until I'm satisfied. You've told me everything. We understand each other? Even though he was older than her, he deferred to her in respect. He was an amazing teacher in grade school. He nodded and said, yes, ma'am, to Harry. I'll have some coffee, please, if you have it. Harry set coffee before Detective Davis and made tea for Olivia. Davis pulled the camcorder from the bag he brought with him, and after fiddling with the tripod for the right height, he attached the camera to it. He pulled out a large notebook and taking a sip of coffee, nodding appreciation to Harry, he said, the reason I brought the camera here is to ask you some follow-up questions. Reasons that I thought you were of when reviewing your previous interviews. Before we get to that, I'm going to fill you on the investigation and why it may seem to you that the police may have dropped the ball. Before all that, though, I think I'd like to say a few things to you first. Things you may have heard before, but I think they're very important, okay? Olivia nodded. Harry had beside her, the glass of water in hand. Okay, good. First, I want you to know none of what happened to you is your fault. None of it. Taken back, Olivia muttered. I know it. Good. I'm glad. I just want to be clear. Nothing you said or didn't do causes to happen to you. Some demented sticks got into your head and do terrible, horrible things to do or their own benefit. No matter what you think you may have done, no one deserves what happened to you. No one. I think sometimes victims tend to appropriation blame onto themselves. I want there to be no confusion here. You did nothing wrong. Olivia's eyes shined and she said, thank you. She understood what Davis meant. Years in prison, she thought some type of awful thing to her was her fault. If she did what she was told, acted a certain way, maybe they would have taken her toes. Maybe she would have still have an ear. Deep inside, she believed that they found a reason to mangle her and torture her because it was in their nature to do it. They caught off on it. Believing it didn't lessen the feeling it was a fault. It didn't help that the girls told her she was to blame for the mutilation over and over again. Now this detective told her what she already knew, yet it helped to have someone else reaffirm it. Someone who knew she needed to hear it. Maybe in time she could believe it was assigned to the blame where it belonged. And the bastards who did this to her. No problem. Now I'm going to tell you everything I know. You deserve nothing less. After Davis left, Olivia closed the door and locked it behind him. She felt exhausted and leaned her head against the door, her head swimming with information. She did indeed tell her everything. He gave her a candid rundown of the investigation he had told her that scared her. Maybe it would have been better if she remained ignorant in certain things. Too late now. Once to learn, she couldn't unlearn. Would you like another tea? Harry said. No, I'm good. I think I'm going to bed. I have a lot going through my head right now. I bet. Harry put a hand on her shoulder and gave it a squeeze. What do you think of Davis? I have faith in him and the other guy. Determined for sure, which is good for us. Yeah, I like him too. Good night, Dad. All right, hon. If you need anything, let me know. I will. Olivia climbed the stairs to her room and rubbing the handle of the knife on her hip. She turned to her iPod attached to small twin speakers and flopped onto the bed, too tired to remove her clothing. The music proved a soothing backdrop of the turmoil of her thoughts, and she reviewed her conversation with the detective. Davis laid out the entire investigation to her. She had a lot of questions. In the end, more continued to travel synapses in her brain at a highway to nowhere. Everything started with her escape. The goal of police investigated her abduction, but now it soon hit the wall and all leads were exhausted in a file and forgotten and untouched. While she escaped, the police had no idea women were abducted or murdered. When they did find out, they had to investigate in reverse. And Olivia killed the gorilla. They helped the other girls to escape. She did it on her own town of Erwin. The Ontario Provincial Police were the responsible agency for the town, but they were primary investigators of the murders. They pulled resources from across the province to assist. Detective Davis, a seasoned homicide investigator, was assigned to the lead. These investigations were complex and required a vast amount of resources to conduct. They generated a mountain of information that needed to be sifted through and determine importance. The forensics officers spent over 2 weeks in the house. They recovered DNA fingerprints. They recovered and identified the two poor women in the freezer. They found body parts of the other women that would identify. Victims generally don't have the DNA or fingerprints on file, or there are no dental records to pursue. How they match to an armed description of a missing girl, or a femur for that matter. They were asking the family reporting missing girls to submit DNA for comparison. It was a shot in the dark, but they took it. Anything to do now to end the pain for someone waiting for the news. For now, the police could do nothing to give them closure. The gorilla, Sean Grady, left evidence of himself all over the house. Why wouldn't he? It was a place according to the bank records of the land registry office. The jackal left DNA and fingerprints too. However, he wasn't on file anywhere. That meant he would never have been charged for any offense requiring DNA or fingerprints. If they did end up identifying him, they would have all the evidence they needed to convict. But in order to do that, they needed to find him. They exhausted all the connections that Sean Grady had with anyone, anywhere. Grady fit the typical serial killer type. He was a loner and a social enough to fit in, but no close friends. He had been well liked in his job as an electrician. No one had a bad thing to say about him. Only the income he generated didn't cover the expense he paid off of the house and a shiny new truck. Forensic audit of his financials couldn't trace the money back to the benefactor, leaving the police wondering where the money came from. All had proven was Sean Grady owned the house and converted it into the prison where she had been kept. It did tend to support a theory that the jackal may be financially independent or well off. But other than that tidbit, there are no other avenues to pursue the determinant of his identity. When the police started on the backgrounds and the victims, how did these killers find them? Why were they chosen and how were they picked up? Olivia had been abducted in Guelph, Jen from Barrie, and Lucy from Burlington. The two dead girls were last seen in London. 4 different police services had different records of the policies on how to investigate. Olivia's disappearance was treated as suspicious from the beginning, and so a lot of time and resources was spent on the investigation. Lucy's disappearance was suspicious, but had no leads and had been soon investigated into a dead end. Jen had been fighting with her parents a lot and had run away from home more than once before. Barrie police thought she had run off again. They didn't treat it as an abduction. The stranded missing report was submitted in a minimal follow-up. Even if located, she was over 18 years old and the police couldn't take her home. They could only determine her well-being. The girls from London were escorts, advertising their services on the internet, meeting strange men in motel rooms. Sad to say, those girls vanished all the time. No one investigating these disappearances thought they had been serial rapists or killer running loose, and the police services didn't communicate to each other, and other than putting the girls' names on the police computer database was missing. This sort of thing happened more in Bruno and Homolika. Bernardo, a prolific rapist operating out of Samburo, met and was encouraged by Homolika to escalate the torture and murder. Although Davis had said Bernardo didn't need the encouragement. After what happened to the police put a system into place to track similar indecents across Canada. That way, if a guy like Bernardo commits crimes in Burlington, Scarborough, and Brampton, the information would be collected in one database, and the police agencies would be notified of the similar incidents and then pool the resources to find the perpetrator. This system is called VICLAS, collected incidents of a certain nature. The abductions involving Olivia, Jen, and Lucy were also unremarkable and dissimilar. They didn't fit the criteria for a VICLAS submission. No one had a clue that they were connected until Olivia fought her way out of the basement. Imagine trying to collect 5-year-old evidence, track down leads, and interview people about years' past events. All trails to the victims are unconcluded by time. If there happened to be a video, it would be long erased and gone. After having explained to her, Olivia would appreciate the difficulties. Davis wasn't complaining. He wanted her to understand, and now, even though the likeness of the evidence even existing was marginal, they looked into it and hoped that something would lead them to the jackal. He knew she wanted to find him and wouldn't stop until he did. His determination swam behind his eyes. During this video interview, Davis kept asking questions about her strange relationship with the jackal. He wanted her perspective of why he treated her differently when Lucy and Jen. He smiled and said, "How would I know that? He's fucking crazy. I don't know anything that crazy, Tick. I don't even wish I did." He turned off the camera, concluding the interview, and Olivia said, "You spent a lot of time in my thoughts on the jackal. Can I ask why?" "Holding up wires," he said. "Absolutely. I waited to tell you this. I didn't want to influence on your interview. It's pretty messed up." "I can take it," he said. "I know. You've proven it the hard way. Possibly the hardest way there is. So here it is. Jen got it pretty bad. He did things to her. We think it happened after. He killed her. Though I think it was either a message or even worse, a compulsion. What did he do? He cut her up. He took her ear, 2 fingers and 3 toes." Olivia stalled in her chest. Little nodules and skin appeared on her arms and a chill overtook her. He said, "Like me. He made her like me." Davis picked away the gear and clicked his hard case shut and sat before her. He placed a hand over the mangled one and didn't flinch, not even a little. She liked him for that. "You are the key, Olivia. I don't want to scare you, but you need to know these things to protect yourself. I think those other girls are practiced. I think the jackal wanted you from the start, from a long time ago. That's why all the girls looked like you. The gorilla, just a game to him. All the girls were less than human, playthings for a twisted dollhouse. To the jackal, though, you were something special, something he fantasized about, and if he took you, or killed you, the illusion he built up around you would shatter, and then what would you have? I believe the jackal knew you, and wanted you for years, and took up a partner to mold and intimidate for express purpose of one day owning you. The gorilla was a buffer, a straw man to the jackal. You were always the prize. I know for some point in your life you met the jackal. It wouldn't surprise me if you learned you knew him, and we can catch this asshole." Sweat dotted her brow. Know him? The jackal? Why is it so absurd? Didn't she have these very same thoughts before? Why else the extra care the jackal spent on her? Olivia said, "Wait, is this why you're asking about the guy from Recreation Center? The guy I had seen in university the night I was taken? I want to know who he is. I don't want to know why he was there. And I'm going to talk to everyone that ever swam in that pool or talk to those halls until I know who he is." She stood. "I gotta go. Here's my card and my personal number. Call me anytime. If you have any thought you think is silly, call me anyways. I want to know. After spending so much time with the jackal, you have insight I think would be stupid to ignore." Davis nodded at Harry and said, "Look after each other." "You can bet on it." Davis left. creating as much mystery as he dispelled. Did he know the jackal? The idea he already know the jackal, maybe spoken to him before, maybe even bumped into him, made her hair on her arms stand at attention, and he let her know fear has no limits. He fell asleep on the top of the blankets with her iPod still playing. She dreamed of the jackal that night. She snuck into her room, sat in her bed in her dream. He woke him up stroking her hair. Her head lay on his lap, and he looked up to him. She asked him to take off the mask. He did. Before he could see his face, she woke up, sweat making her clothes cling to her body. He drank from the tap of the washroom, returned to her room. She put on pajamas and lay down. She didn't turn off the iPod. She liked the background noise and her thoughts sprayed. Olivia slept with her knife in her hand. After all happened, she needed it. It was her shield against the night. The investigation plodded on. Davis contacted Olivia once a week to update her and see if they were okay. It was different from the last time. Before, the police practically ignored her in interviewing her. Now Davis called her weekly with updates. She felt good about that. Once again, after some time, the media vans left without a word from Olivia or Harry. The police stopped maintaining their daily vigil and opted to increase patrols in her area again. If she stood at her window, she would see a patrol car swing by twice in an hour. It was good to see, but a lot could happen at the time the police weren't there. Just ask Jen. After Davis imparted this belief she knew the jackal, Olivia brooded over it, picked it and like a scab that wouldn't heal. It seemed absurd to think the jackal might be Dale. He would have been too young to the first girl to have been taken, and how would he control and intimidate much older and more violent Sean Grady? It didn't seem possible. I had never witnessed Dale get angry or hurt or anyone. Sean didn't seem the type who would ever take orders from anyone he thought would be inferior. A young teenage boy like Dale would fit the criteria. Davis thought that the jackal would finance the torture house, paid for it, and let Sean be the figurehead. Dale's family didn't have the money. How could he access enough of it to buy a house, convert the basement into cells, and put it in a walk-in freezer? She discounted Dale as the jackal and moved on to the mystery man of the Great Creation Center, trying to remember who it looked like. She never saw him with anyone. Most times he would be by a pool. The book open in his lap, just like most other parents waiting for their kids to finish their lessons. She didn't remember seeing him talk to anyone, never saw a partner with him. He roamed the halls, ended up near her somewhere, perched on a bench with a book and sometimes a coffee. Tall, strong, the features of the face blurred in her mind, as though she was trying to focus on the camera lens, yet unable to bring out the details in what she wanted to capture. He wore a hat, most times, a black cap with a yellow P on it. She would stare at that Davis. Olivia called him and told him. He said, Pittsburgh Pirates. Excuse me? The hat. The hat was the Pittsburgh Pirates, a baseball team. Is that helpful? Absolutely. Another detail to use. Good work. I appreciate you calling. Please continue to do so. A compliment filled her warm glow, and she tried to remember more. She didn't want to push it too hard. She didn't think about him back then when she worked in Recreation Center. He happened to be one of the guys she would see a lot. It appeared menacing in retrospect, especially considering she had been in a gulf on the same night she disappeared. She wanted to be objective about him, like a good detective and recall facts. Coincidences like they were hard to ignore. At first, the news of Jen filled her with despair and had her own chances of survival. When she did think about the jackal would let her escape from him, he would wait, bide his time, and appear like a demon in the night, whisker a hidey hole, just to use at leisure. The thought brought on violent shivers, making her teeth clack together. Harry did the best to distract her from the thoughts of the new home, attempting to entice her in the conversations about the walls and take down what new tub and to put in the restroom. It failed. After the news vans left, the police moved from their static post to the periodic checks. She revisited phase 3 of her how to get healthy plan. She wanted to institute it, and she moved into the new house. In order to move into the new house, they had to sell this one. She needed to get moving on. She did by spending more time in getting the house ready for the view. Busy hands, busy mind. Olivia still startled by the noise, and a light sheen would appear on the forehead when moving shadow would entice visions of the jackal. She walked around the inside of the house, gazing at the windows for new footprints. Sometimes, when the sun hid behind the cloud and darkness descended seemingly in blink, she would stop under a window in a shiver, expecting a tall animal ears in the mask to walk by her window. She hated darkness. She hid so much. Despite these setbacks, the clutter disappeared. Furniture rearranged at equivalent space, and the walls were coated with fresh paint. Her home was ready to view. We sold it. Wait, really? Olivia knew something was up when Harry walked through the front door. He didn't say a thing. He lifted a bag of Swiss chocolate takeout in his hand, and a smile stretching his cheeks and threatened to engulf his face. It wasn't until he set his bag up on the table as he spilled the news. Yep. Did we get what we asked for? Double. Yep. That's wonderful. That she hugged Harry for the reason she couldn't explain. Crying overtook her, reducing her putty. Her small frame shook in Harry's arms. He began to recite expecting platitudes, words that he hated her to hear because they were expected. Hey now, it's okay. It's gonna be better. We just need time. He didn't hate the words today, even though they're all terrible things she had been through. The jackal put lie to those words. How can anything get better? Jen's dead. The jackal's still out there, maybe watching her, waiting for the right time. Despite all that, at the moment in her father's arms, she dared to believe him. Chapter 25. Moving day arrived with surprising speed. She remembered packing boxes, labeling them, and setting them aside when her dad was pulling her shoulder, telling her to stop getting started. The sleep tousled her hair standing straight up in her head. Harry rented a U-Haul truck at the move, and they estimated 2 trips to get it done. All in all, it took 3. Frank showed up to help, and so did Dale. To Olivia's surprise, so did Dale's parents, also pitching to help. Dale's mom, Angela, teared up at the sight of Olivia and pulled her into a hug. Olivia swallowed a lump, didn't yield the temptation to cry. She had done enough crying. Angela smelled of peanut butter cookies, and it brought back pleasant memories. Dale's dad, Carl, patted her on the arm and wanted to shake her hand, but dropped it and awkwardly hugged her, and with a quick 1-2 pat on her back, let her go. Dale's parents looked the same, only older. They were both fit from the time in the gym, and Angela boasted with winter tan, no doubt, earned from her frequent visits to the tanning bed. Frank lasted 1 truckload before he received an opportune phone call from a client demanding his immediate attention. The most surprising addiction was the police showing up to her house. Davis and 4 of his cop friends showed up to help on a day off. So before 3 in the afternoon, they emptied their old home of any evidence of their presence and filled up their new one, cluttering the house with cardboard boxes covered in tape labeled with black marker and furniture that didn't find a permanent spot. After they unloaded the last of their belongings of the U-Haul truck, Harry felt the workers' pizza and soda. They all relaxed in their living room, some on couches, chairs, amidst the cardboard boxes and unassembled furniture. Others stood, leaning against the wall while balancing a pizza and drinks in their hands. Olivia set up an iPod with the Bose speakers, and they enjoyed the food, drinks, and each other's company while listening to music. Winter mosaic on them towards spring. Between spaces of melting snow, spots of grass showed emerald. The sun hung around longer than the evening like a new house. The season of renewal inspired hope. The police kept, except for Detective Davis, left after pizza, and Olivia, Harry, and thanked them for their help. Dale remained searching through the pizza boxes, littering the table. Just 1 box had any slices left in it. The ones covered in gross tomatoes and feta cheese. Dale crinkled his nose and Olivia caught it. Olivia said, "Dad, what's with this pizza? Did you ask for the least appetizing toppings or something? It was part of the deal. It was Greek style or something. It's something, all right." Dale and his parents left not long after the policeman. They had been discussing the renovations needed for the house, and Dale offered to help when he could, and even volunteered the labor of his dad. Carl owned a trucking business and often drove the trucks himself for the long hauls stateside. He didn't have to, but he liked to do it. He said it reminded him of his early days when he had just started up his business. When he told him he enjoyed the piece of the road, to which Angela rolled her eyes and said, while leaning to touch Olivia's knee, "Piece of the road, huh? You just want to get away from me for a while. Now, honey, I'm not complaining. I like the peace and quiet from you, too." Dale said, "So how about it, Dad? You want to help out or what?" He glanced at Olivia and holding her gaze said, "Sure, why not? Am I a handy fellow?" "I am a handy fellow." Dale said, "Yeah, much better than me. I once screwed my shirt to a skateboard ramp I was building. What didn't turn out like I hoped." Angela said, "You got that right. Didn't you fall that up it?" Olivia said, "Wait a minute, you fell up a ramp? It's easier than you think when the bottom of a ramp isn't level with the ground. I chipped a tooth." Olivia couldn't help it. She laughed. "Now that's my embarrassment complete. I'll take my leave." Angela stood and said, "It was great seeing you again, Olivia. I can tell how happy I was to learn you were alive and home again." "Thank you," said Olivia. Carl said, "Have Frank give me a call. Give his renovation thing going." Despite what Angela says, something like that would help me close to home. Just like the way she likes it. Yes, I'm all aglow with the excitement. They left, with promises to call and see you soon. The silence between songs broken and dripping and melting slow from the ever-troughs. The day proved warmer than forecast, and everyone was there. Olivia opened the back windows and let the breeze in. The cool air refreshing at first, but soon turned cold. Olivia suppressed the chill. She wanted to close the window, but full belly exhaustion of moving left her without energy to do so. She glanced at her dad. "You feeling cold, Dad?" "What?" "Because if you're cold, you could close the window." "No, do you want me to close the window?" "If you're cold, you were going to say anyways, and sure, that'd be nice." His eyebrows climbed his forehead. He wasn't very subtle. He groaned, stood, and closed the window, slept on the couch, almost lying down. Olivia smiled, triumphant. He moved to her eyes of Davis. "You feel good about Dale?" "You tell me. You knew you know both of them, and Jackal and Dale is better than I do. What's your gut feeling? Gut feeling? If I had any kind of gut feeling, I would have sensed this madness and never would have been grabbed. Davis shook his head. That's not true. That'd be trying to sense a lightning bolt. It's just a whole guilt thing I see victims struggle with. If I only did this then, that would have happened. It did happen, and you can't change the past. You can get your dad suffered guilt from the day, am I right? Harry said, oh yeah, over stupid things too. Things I knew I couldn't change, but like you said, like what? Olivia said. I kept thinking, I should have convinced you to stay home another year, or go to school closer to home, so you would stay there. I felt a lot of times, me losing you is my fault, and I punched myself for it. Olivia grimaced. That makes no sense. They're all my decisions. You couldn't have done anything to change it. Davis said, guilt doesn't have to make sense. It just is. Maybe it's because we think we're in control when, in reality, we control so little. We are a star of our own movies, and we all want a happy ending, don't we? Except we are not the directors. There's no script, and we all can ever do as best we can be. Day to day, he took a drink of Coke and smiled. So really, what do you think, Dale? Olivia shook her head. Not him. I've thought about it a lot. Dale is not as big as the Jackal, and I don't know. It's not as mature. The Jackal just feels older. Something about the way he moved and acted. I keep thinking about it, the relationship between Sean and the Jackal, too. I'm positive the Jackal was the leader. I don't see Dale as a strong enough personality to control and intimidate Sean. Besides, I don't let him help me move if I thought he was a Jackal. He would know where I lived. I wouldn't want to make it easy on a prick. Davis laughed and said, You're an interesting person, Olivia. How so? Other than the obvious, you mean? Let's say I've dealt with and had the privilege to meet any victims. They carry a past on them like a backpack. Some people it weighs on. The others carry it along. I'm comfortable with it because it helps shape the person they are. Those people realize they assign how much weight in the backpack holds. They decide how to bow their back or if they'll straighten up underneath it. The trauma you've been through, it would have crushed you. It crushed Jen after meeting Lucy if she'd been in there as long as you, and I'm sure it would have ruined her too. You, though, you thought your way out of there and, from what I've seen, you continue to fight. Like I said, you're very interesting. I hate to get on your bad side. He stood up and stretched and said, I better get going. Looks like you guys still have a lot to work ahead of you. She followed him down the hallway and closed the door behind him. She liked him. Her dad, sitting on the couch with a soda in hand, said, I think he likes you. He was oblivious to his daughter, blushing in the shadows by the front door. Chapter 26. The security company installed the alarm the next day. Olivia waited a week before they returned to install the video cameras. She wanted the cameras to cover all sides of the house with the compatibility of recording. Olivia fiddled with the string settings, learning how to adjust the camera angles and zoom features. They recorded in 24-hour intervals, and the old footage was deleted to be replaced with the new. Olivia's routine after her father left for work, including checking the doors and sitting down at the computer and reviewing the footage the night before. Satisfied no one had crept upon the property, Olivia bruised herself with unpacking boxes and studying the layout of the house, thinking of ways to improve it. The windows were large and allowed plenty of natural light. Instead, though, the rooms are small and cramped. Olivia wanted to open the place up. She would ask Frank about the walls would be safely brought down. She made notes about her ideas, and then Harry returned that night. They reviewed them together. They invited Frank for the first weekend. He declined. He said he would be out of town on business. Sunday evening, when the fading light brought shadows on the property, Olivia spoke to her dad about phase 3 of her plan. She was nervous about it, and she was aware of Harry's feelings about her since she was a small child. She needed it, though, to feel safe and hope she would convince her dad of it. It would go a long way to helping her heal. Harry declined the love seat and the top button of the pants undone. After the second helping of the dessert he didn't need. Head heavy, watching Sports Center. Olivia chewed a nail and her iPad on her lap. A video photo of a pending discussion on screen. Dad? Yeah, honey? Remember how I talked about the 3 stages of the plan I had? Yeah. I want to start it. Phase 3. Okay, what do you need? I want a dog. I want to train it. I want it to guard me. Harry hadn't spoken of it much, and she knew he'd nursed healthy terror of dogs. She had pestered him as a child for a puppy, and he always said no. No arguments. He had used, and no amount of tears would weaken his resolve. Intermittently over the years, when she would see a puppy being to lick the face of a child, she would ask Harry for a puppy. He would say no. She would ask him why, curious, as if to deny her this and denied her little else. She told her when she was a kid one of his friends had been mauled by a lab, and the most gentle of breeds. His friend lost the use of an eye. Harry had seen the attack ever since then, and the mere presence of a dog filled him with a nervous anxiety. He walked wide around them, even the little ones. The fiery beast terrified him. After she learned of it, she let it go. She never wanted to be the cause of her dad's discomfort at the time, realizing the selfish goal was not worth pursuing. The thought of wanting a dog had never crossed her mind since. After being taken and being shown how helpless she could be, her mind turned to ways which would improve her safety. She considered taking judo or jiu-jitsu. She had read those martial arts that opponents' weight lets them, and a smaller person such as herself would be good technique, could overcome someone larger and superior strength. She would have to leave the house to do it, which was bad. It took years to become proficient in the arts, and with the jackal out there, she didn't think she had time, which was worse. Thinking on it more, she didn't matter how good she became because her success would depend on her attacker not carrying a weapon of some sort. A dog would be trained to attack those who would do her harm. A dog would love her and defend her, and would give her something to love and want to defend in return. The dog wouldn't have to go to work or leave for hours. Its job was to be with her and be her friend. It wouldn't care about her missing fingers, toes, or ear. It wouldn't care if she had been raped and imprisoned. It would only care about her. Knowing her dad's terror, a part of her felt shame for even asking. He would be living here too, in terror, like she had been. She had believed after living with a dog and seeing how well it could be trained in a useful part of the family, he would overcome that fear. Harry tensed. His eyes widened slightly and his throat moved, making the struggle to digest a request visible. What kind of dog are we topping here? A Chihuahua? A furry alarm that could fit in a purse? Trying to make a joke? Whatever, she expected him to attempting to make light of it, wasn't it? No, a German Shepherd, like the dogs the police use. Oh boy, Harry said and rubbed a hand along his lip. Uh-oh, thought Olivia. I got him wanting a drink. Guilt overcame her. You know, Dad, let's forget it. Stupid idea, you know? Harry coughed and rubbed his hands together. He said, No, honey, it's a brilliant idea. I think we should do it. Dad, come on, look at you. You look like you want to vomit. I did, a little bit. I swallowed it back. He offered a shaky smile and said, I'll get over it. It'll help keep you safe. I'll feel better going to work and not leaving you alone. Dad, we can think of something else. You know, too much stress brings the urge to drink. You being sober is more important to me. You've done a wonderful job, and I don't want to ruin it. You know what I learned in AA? What's that? I always want to drink. Always. Not my own personal storm cloud hovering above me, ready to rain down at any time. For any reason. This fear of dogs, it's in my head. I know it, and I can beat it. Not every dog attacks kids and people. If I were the case, who the hell would bother to own one? I also know I can't lose you again. I'm not strong enough, and if this will improve your chances to continue to live free of fear, then fucking right we're going to do it. And we'll be the meanest, ugliest bastard of a dog out there. Okay, and thanks, Dad. I think this will be great. He bared teeth. Although he meant to smile, Olivia thought it strained guilt, worried her stomach. She pushed it away. Her dad would overcome his fear, and who knows, maybe he would eventually love the dog. She would get a cute little puppy because she doesn't love a puppy. People with no soul, that's who. With the little training of the dog and her dad, Olivia believed everything could work out fine. Olivia did her research. It kept her busy and her nagging fears in check. A good thing, lasting until the sun's rays drew lengthening shadows of the backyard. A prelude to inevitable darkness. That's what she learned isn't hurting. Purebred dogs were expensive. Popular breed, the German Shepherd proved to be an exorbitant, ranging from $5,000 to $8,000 on an untrained pup. After buying a new house and the cost of renovations, Harry did not have the money she would expect her dad to fork out more. She turned her questing fingers to pursuing internet sites for rescue dogs. The prices were much more affordable. Still, in her mind, she pictured a majestic German Shepherd patrolling the property. Keen senses of probing for danger. In her vision, she pictured it wearing a cape. German Shepherds didn't show up on the rescue sites too often. She had trouble finding one. As the week passed, her disappointment grew. During this time, Frank and Carl popped in to make measurements and run ideas past her. Dale showed up and had his dad at times, admitting to her all this stuff hurt his brain. He wasn't geared towards working his hands and grudgingly admired Frank and his dad. They made the work look easy. Frank learned soon enough Olivia was one making decisions and stopped bothering to call Harry when the question arose. He would talk to her and then to Carl. Olivia could see by Frank designing to consult with Carl, and Dale's dad knew what he was doing. Supplies were routinely dropped in the driveway, and Harry was left with the task of bringing them in and putting them where Frank directed so they would be ready for installation at some date in the future. Harry would arrive home after work and groan in stacks of wood and drywall in the driveway, rubbing his lower back before the work would even strain his muscles. A sympathetic gesture of the burn in his muscles would soon be objected to. Olivia always helped them and couldn't help but tease him and his old man back. After one or too many onerous trips back to the driveway and into the house of the length of the drywall, Olivia stumbled upon a photo of a dog in a not-so-local shelter. A purebred German Shepherd named Brutus, and the description of the dog was shy temperament and had been abandoned by previous owners. The picture showed a dog curled in a ball in the back of a cage, His brown eyes showed over the tops of his paws. So sad. Maybe it was sad look in the eyes of the fact that the dog appeared so lost and trapped inside of a cage. Whatever the reason, Olivia's vision blurred and it shocked her to realize the simple image evoked such a response. She would have this dog. She glanced at the posting Brutus arrived at the shelter 3 days ago. Would it still be there? She shivered as the thought he may be gone. 3 days is a long time, especially for a purebred German Shepherd. She glanced at the time, 6:17 p.m. The shelter closes 9 p.m., about an hour away. They could make it. She dialed the number of the shelter hard in her throat, and she actually tittered when they told her Brutus had been adopted yet. She said they would be there in an hour. Her heart swelled with excitement. This felt right. Perfect even. Harry dropped the drywall behind her with a curse. It slipped out of his hands, and he chipped the corner when he struck the floor. He was frowning until he saw the smile on Olivia's face. When they arrived at the shelter, the man who greeted them was behind the counter with a celebrity gossip magazine open in his lap and a can of Coca-Cola in his hand. He offered a smile and stood large and florid, friendly face. He extended a beefy hand and introduced himself as Mark. He paused, noticing her missing fingers and a slight pause, making it easy for Olivia to deal with because it was over so quick. Olivia said, I called earlier about Brutus. She half expected him to say sorry. He had been adopted for an incredibly long hour it took for them to get there. Ever since being in the basement, it took an effort to be of will to nurse hope. Such a fragile thing. Who, you the one who giggled on the phone? I thought you'd be younger, he said with a wink. He walked out from behind the corner. Would you like to meet him? Yes, please. Olivia and Harry followed Mark through the double door past the rows of cats and cages and through another set of doors and larger cages for the dogs. The room smelled musty with fur and a stronger scent of urine and feces. Olivia spotted Brutus in the back against the bar's cage. His eyes darted from Mark to Harry and even then settled on Olivia. The tip of his tail wagged in smidgen. Other than Brutus, 2 other dogs occupied cages in the room. A small Yorkshire Terrier yapped happily and spun circles around the enclosure. Another dog, older, cracked an eye and saw nothing of interest, then went back to sleep. Her attention focused on Brutus and she knelt before the cage. The tail moved intensively. Harry said, Does he bite? Brutus? No, not him. Mops around mostly. His previous owners moved out of the house and left him behind. Real shock for people moving in. No, if you ask me, he's heartbroken. Some people say that's nonsense, a dog being heartbroken. I know otherwise, though, working in here. Olivia held it back to the cage. An offering? Harry said, Maybe you shouldn't do that. Relax, Dad, we're friends. Even Brutus knows it, don't you, boy? Brutus' tail twitched in agreement. He edged his snout closer, nostrils flaring. His pink tongue darted out and licked her hand. Dark said, I would say he does. Without taking her eyes from Brutus, Olivia said, I'd like to take him home. Olivia didn't know what she expected. Well, that's not entirely accurate. She expected to show up, pay some fees, and take the dog home because she wanted it to work like that. It didn't, not at this shelter. Mark explained the process to her. She nodded at him, brow furrowed and biting her lip. They wanted to make sure the dog, when placed, would stay there and no better ensure the end. She had to apply to be adopted parent of Brutus. Too many times people adopted a dog in good intentions. They wanted to keep the dog. They wanted to love it. And they wanted to love them in return. Turns out having a dog is a lot of work. A lot more work than films and quaint TV commercials portray. Dogs needed to go for walks regularly. The bigger the dog, the more regular the walks. They had to be fed, occasionally washed, given a lot of time and attention most people don't have, and then crap. In the summer, this doesn't present too much of a problem other than the general grossness of crap roasting in the sun. On winter, though, the snow tended to cover it up more, and you can get to it. Come spring, when the snow melted, the backyards would smell mindful of brown, soggy lumps. All in all, dogs are a huge responsibility with the surprise of a great many people. Mark said the shelter instituted guidelines for the application process. The adoptee would be interviewed and a form filled out. If satisfactory, the employee would attend Olivia's house and the home visit and would see if the property were conclusive to a dog. If all worked out well, then the dog would be placed into the care of the applicant. The whole process seemed overwhelmed and at first quite ridiculous. How would you expect to place dogs? Intimidating as they least, but induced unexpected anxiety in Olivia. She had thought it would be simpler. After Mark explained about using the process, they drastically reduced the home return rate of dogs. She understood it and accepted it, even though it still felt a daunting and scary venture. What if they decided they were unsuitable? Worse, what if she thought the home visit after seeing the place they denied her Brutus? The possibility of rejection scared and angered her in equal proportions. Please, don't look so scared. It's not bad as you think, Mark said with a smile. Let's go have a seat. I'll get my clipboard out and we'll get the interview done. They were back at the front and Mark sank into his chair, lifted his magazine, opened his drawer or two, and finding a clipboard and form, placed it before her and said, Fill it out, please. The form took a little time to fill. General personal information like her name, age. She glanced at Harry and then she thought of the address line. She forgot the house number. New house or no new house, it was not something she would forget. It was an indication of her nervousness and her fear they wouldn't let her have Brutus. She handed the completed form to Mark. He checked it over, nodded, and stuck another sheet of paper in the clipboard, with the pen all of it disappearing in his hand. He said, "So, why do you want this dog?" She prepared herself and saying, "I want a friend." When it came out of her mouth, she heard the truth of it. He grinned. Mark smiled warmly and winked and said, "Good answer." The interview went well. Mark told her to be prepared for a home visit. She didn't expect any problems considering they would be fenced backyard. Harry chided her for his nervousness. He asked to see Brutus before she left, and Mark appeared pleased by the request. She knelt before the cage and told him to expect to come home with her soon. He canted his head and tail and wagged at her voice. She liked to believe he understood her. Who knows? Maybe he did. The visit took place 2 days later. The stress made Olivia irritable. She followed Harry around and wiped the table as soon as the dishes left it glaring for him, daring to leave such a mess. She brushed imaginary crumbs off his chair once he vacated it, and accompanied by his harried sigh. He wanted Brutus. She wanted him so much that it made her wearing her hands and wander the house looking for something to clean. She wanted the home to visit to go perfectly. Late at night, while passing cars lit up the ceilings in flashes of light, she wondered if Brutus really was for protection. Maybe what she said to Mark made more sense. She wanted a friend, one to love her despite her scars, the ones on the surface, the deeper ones beneath. She believed Dale to be her friend, but he wasn't around all the time, and she wanted it to be kind of love only a dog would provide, and the security attached to that love. The detective, Davis, proved that the interesting and intelligent person, he was kind to her, and as far as she could tell, very forthright with the case. She liked the quiet confidence, and his eyes seemed to read everything. She knew the attraction to be reprocated, damaged goods, mangled. Who would want to be with her? She convinced herself Davis would be nice to her because of the job. It would look very good on him if he were to catch the jackal. There would be no other reason for the kind words of the charming smile. It was her job to care. He wouldn't like her. Not in that way. She was damaged, physically and emotionally. There would be no expectations from Brutus. He would want food, water, exercise, and her love. She gave plenty to give and wanted to share it. The very idea of the home visit would affect the adoption field in her dread. The worried in her nails until she tasted blood. One time, she would think everything would work out. She was doing something good now, wasn't she? A person could get through her whole life and shit luck, would they? When she would think, why not? Plenty of people got f***ed by life every day. Why not her? A ceramic arrow pointing right at her, letting her know the fate wasn't done with her yet. Oh no, not by a long shot. A few more dollops of misery have yet to be dolled out. When Mark called to make sure she wasn't home for the visit of people in light, carefree tone while her guts twisted inside. Mark ended up having a home visitor, showing up at the front door with a clipboard and pen. Olivia couldn't picture him without them. He grinned at her surprise, and she invited him in. Olivia cleared away most of the boxes and put him in the garage. She hoped she wouldn't check in there. She might be crushed by the avalanche of boxes if he opened the door. She relaxed a lot when Mark said, "This is part of just a formality." Most people who thought dog would usually scared of the process of explaining to him. Too much work, you see. The people who go through with it all are the ones who release a dog to. You can tell they want the dog, otherwise why go through with all the stress? It is very stressful. Only because you care. In my book, that makes you a great applicant. Okay, show me the rest of the place so I can sign off on Brutus. And with that, she got the okay to adopt Brutus. She would pick him up any time. She called her dad and told him to expect to go on a road trip when he got home from work. Olivia rested on the couch, positioned as she could see Harry pull on the driveway. Once he got home, they were going to meet Brutus. Time never moved so slow. She would be convinced a half hour had passed when she glanced at her watch and see 5 minutes elapsed since their last check. TV babbled in the background. The iPad sat forgotten on her lap, and the cup of tea off steam while she ignored the table. She wanted to get going. Her body hummed the urge to go. Not until she had Brutus in the car would it be real to her. When headlights swept in the living room, she stood and hustled out to the door in her coat of her arms, her boots not quite on. She hopped to the car and surprised Harry watching her. "No time for dinner." "Nope, no time." "Did you lock the door and set the alarm?" "Fuck." With exasperation and shock, those are the things she had never forgotten to do before. She checked them repeatedly. Like if she didn't move fast enough, someone would come in and scoop Brutus from her. Ridiculous, yet the power to thought shoved all of the considerations rudely aside. She yanked on the handle and Harry stopped her with, "I'll get it." Harry fast walked to the front door, disappeared inside, and emerged a short time after. He locked the door, gave her a thumbs up, trotted to the car. "Ready?" She nodded. "Can we get something in the drive-thru on the way?" "I suppose so, if you must." Come on, honey, what's the rush? It's not like the dog will be gone when you get there. He shakes out heavily. I know. Mark greeted them with a smile and a handshake. He handed Olivia paperwork for the shots and licensing and recommended a good vet near them. Olivia, flushed and excited, handed the papers directly to Harry. She kept forgetting his fear of dogs and wondering how he was holding up. He hadn't wiped out his lip, a good sign. He may have been in consideration of her, trying to conceal the terror, feeling great affection for him. She put a hand on his arm and said, "Thanks for this, Dad." "No problem." Olivia turned to Mark and said, "Okay, I'm ready. We're ready." "Perfect. You have your collar and the leash?" Olivia said, "Fuck." Her face turned bright red. She apologized to Mark and her dad for swearing and felt like the world's biggest idiot for forgetting the leash and collar. She didn't even thought of dog bed, bowls, or food. All the essentials for dog ownership slipped her mind, and Mark had reminded her to bring them home a home visit. She rushed her poor dad into the car, debated on even letting him stop for food, and they should have stopped and did some shopping of dog items. Mark waved off the swearing and gave her a slip leash until she could get a collar and a leash for Brutus. All of her self-recriminations and doubts faded when Mark walked out of the back room with Brutus on a leash. Brutus gazed at her with amber eyes, furtive, and she didn't notice a swish of his tail upon seeing her, and a thought of it as a good sign. Mark handed her a leash and she clasped it. Her heart thumped. Her eyes burned as she swallowed. When she found her voice and said, "Thanks for everything." "No need. I'm sure Brutus here has found himself a great family. I'm glad for him and for you." She offered the back of her hand to Brutus. Like last time, he sniffed and licked it. She scratched the top of his head, between his ears. She closed his eyes and tail flicked with enthusiasm. "Yep, I'm sure you two will get along fine. Now your dad here, he might take some time getting used to Brutus." Olivia turned to see Harry pale with a line of sweat on his brow. Harry laughed, nervous, and said, "I'm sure it'll be fine." Mark recommended a good store on the way home to dog supplies. He provided a list, and Harry took it and stuffed it in his pocket. Olivia said, "Ready, Brutus?" Brutus' tongue darted out, licking her pants. "I'll take that as a yes." They walked to the car, and Harry chuckled. A high tittering sound, lined with anxiety. He said, "I forgot he'd be riding in the car with me. Stupid thing to forget. How would you even get him home otherwise? Like forgetting a leash and a collar? Not so stupid, Dad. I'll sit in the back with him. Just don't look in the rearview mirror too much. With luck, you may even be able to forget he's there." She opened the door, and Brutus climbed in with his tail between his legs. When she got beside him, put on her seatbelt, and Harry drove them home with the new furry family member. My throat hurts so badly. But that's the end of that. So that was the episode I was worrying the most about, being 26 freaking pages, and this episode's probably an hour long with 6 cuts, to my knowledge. But besides from that, today we have read these pages, and now, whoop-de-doo, ba-doo, oops, ba-doo, there we go. Is it able to be seen on camera? Pretty well, could be better. Okay. So, we are now done with that. I don't know why I forgot about chapter 25 and all that. But now, next time we're reading pages 143 to 162. Where am I going? Oh, here it is. 143 to 162. And chapters 27 to 32, making this very close to being the end of our good little book. Little, but it's actually huge. Anyways, hope you guys have a super fantastic, wonderful day. Be polite, be efficient. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.